Good afternoon and welcome to the Great Books series for February. Thank you for joining us a week later than we thought it was going to be, but it's a beautiful day today and we are ready to hear what Dr. Monica Hogan has to say about the parable of the sower. She began as an adjunct in 1994 and has been full-time since 1999. She teaches, in addition to Composition 1 and 2, she teaches technical writing, literature by women, and introduction to literature. She's highly involved in the department and in the college, and in particular, for the department, she has a focus on assessment, which also puts her into touch, particularly with diversity issues and working with our department on those. Monica actually started as an engineering major and quickly discovered that actually writing about why things worked was more akin with her preferences than nitpicking over how to make things work, which is why she does such a good job with technical writing. Her bachelor's is in English. Her master's is also in English, and she has an interdisciplinary PhD in curriculum design and urban leadership policy studies. Her dissertation focused on women's experiences inside of community college composition classrooms. In terms of hobbies, Monica loves to travel, and she has been restricted for the last 2 years, so she's ready to go as soon as she can. Her last adventure was in Germany and Switzerland, but I believe she was also on the Galapagos not a few months before that. So very varied. Monica chose this book, The Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. She was actually trying to decide between this and Ursula Le Guin's Wizard of the Earthsea, but decided to go with Butler because of the depth and the fact that they are great literature, and perhaps not as many people have read as widely in Butler's repertoire as she deserves. So without further ado, this is Dr. Monica Hogan.
So hi all. Before I get started, I do want to thank Maureen and Michael Carragher for their fabulous work making our great books mini lecture series such a success. It takes a lot of work putting these things together. And I also want to give a shout out to all those people behind the scenes that make us all look so great online. It is really, truly an honor to be asked to speak about a book that influences my worldview. And one of those books for me has caught the limelight again too, nearly 30 years after its publishing in 1993. So my pick, as Maureen noted, is Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. So I'm sure most of you have heard the recent hype, such as there's an article in the New Yorker by Abby Aguirre, which plays loose with the facts of Octavia Butler's book, Parable of the Sower. And she argues that the novel is unmatched in the contest over which dystopian classic is most applicable to our time. Things always go smoother when you're in practice, don't they? So, and that's true. As the New Yorker article suggests, that our protagonist, Lauren Alamina, is 15 at the start of the book. It is true that she shares a book about plants and California Indians. It is true the pharmaceutical companies make drugs that boost mental performance. But by the end of the diary-style book, Lauren is 18, and Lauren never purposefully or solely collected maps and books on how Native Americans use plants. In fact, Lauren encourages her friend to heed any kind of survival information from encyclopedias, biographies, anything that helps you learn to live off the land and defend ourselves, as Lauren explains in the book. And she says even some fiction might be useful. And those drugs that are referred to in the New Yorker article that boost mental performance, they treated Alzheimer's in the book. The recreational drug derived from them was created like most recreational drugs. Lauren explains it was a home brew, a basement drug invented by someone who was trying to assemble one of the other higher priced street drugs. Sounds pretty familiar. So is Butler's book a harbinger of what's to come? First, it is really worth time to get the basics of the book set. This is a coming of age book. Parable of the Sower tells Lauren Alamina's coming of age story in a world that's in climate crisis and filled with division. Lauren lives outside of Los Angeles within the walls her community built. Within the walls, the community does its best to grow small gardens and fruit trees, to educate children, to protect each other from everyone outside of the walls. Even within the walls, the community inflicts pain upon one another. For example, the Moss family is really just a man who purchased several wives for himself and claims, as Lauren writes, that God wants men to be patriarchs, rulers, and protectors of women, and father as many children as possible. He's an engineer. Another family, the Dunns, ran one of their family members out of town when they discovered he had been raping his 12-year-old niece, but not before his niece became pregnant. Families in Lauren's community, they don't have work. Most live in really overcrowded conditions. Some share garages. Water is scarce, so fire is particularly fearsome. Families typically generate their own electricity if they have electricity. The community has to work together to protect the resources they have inside those walls they built. However, a few recognize that the walls won't hold back the fires and the desperate people. So let's look outside the walls. Outside community walls, there are no safe spaces. There are only hiding or inconspicuous spaces. No one looks well kept or healthy because if they did, they'd be a target. Food, water, clothing, everything except pain and misery is scarce. Race, ethnicity, and gender are all causes to be suspicious of each other. There are some paying jobs, but they're difficult to get. And if they had, they are difficult to get to. For example, Lauren's father is a professor. However, traveling home from the university ends his life. There are some recreations of company towns, and Lauren knows those company towns create what she names debt slavery. There are wealthy homes that hired live-in housekeepers and live-in cooks who Lauren learned were slaves in all but name. There are people addicted to a drug that brings them pleasure in watching the world burn. For you sci-fi movie buffs, it's a Mad Max or a boy and his dog dystopian world. So in the setting, Lauren tries to make sense of the world and carry on. Her father's generation, though, simply tries to survive in hopes of making America great again. Those are words that Butler put in Lauren's mouth in the early 1990s. They elect a president who runs on that campaign, and he dismantles the space program and ends worker protection laws. Lauren, on the other hand, tries to be a pragmatist. She has nightmares about her community burning and the outsiders rushing through their gates. And she knows the inequalities are unsustainable. She tries to learn about plants, about self-defense, about weapons, about geography, about finding water, anything she thinks will help her survive. She puts together her grab and go bag. At first, she tries to get others to plan with her, but she quickly learns how powerful the fear of change can be. Most importantly, Lauren questions what she believes about the world and the nature of God, just like we've seen in history when people have endured ongoing life-changing tragedies. And then the inevitable happens, because it's the and thens that make stories really interesting. Shortly after Lauren's 18th birthday, her father dies and the walled community burns. Lauren's family is dead. Lauren's friends are dead or lost in the scattering. Lauren is now, in her own words, one of the street poor. The remaining half of Parable of the Sower focuses on Lauren gathering a small group of trusted people, heading north, and eventually starting a community called Earthseed, which is founded on the truths Lauren has been discovering. So here's how I'm going to take a detour in the presentation. We need to go and look at another approach to literature. We need to look at literary theory of authorial intent. So I'm going to turn to Octavia Butler. On the last page of my Warner Books edition, so this isn't in all the different editions, are Butler's words. I'm a 46-year-old writer who can remember being a 10-year-old writer and who expects someday to be an 80-year-old writer. I'm also comfortably asocial, a hermit in the middle of Los Angeles, a pessimist if I'm not careful, a feminist, a Black, a former Baptist, an oil and water combination of ambition, laziness, insecurity, certainty, and drive. And there are many wonderful recorded interviews with Butler online. I really encourage you to find some and listen to her. They're worth your time. So it's not difficult at all. It's not much of a stretch to see Butler in Lauren. The Octavia E. Butler website describes her novels as exploring themes of Black injustice, global warming, women's rights, and political disparity. Tananarive Due, in writing for Essence magazine, knows that Butler is often called the mother of Afrofuturism or Black speculative fiction. There's no denying that Butler's work embraces Afrofuturism, which the Tate Art Museums, if you haven't heard of that term before, defines as cultural aesthetic that combines science fiction, history, and fantasy to explore the African American experience and aims to connect those from the Black diaspora with forgotten and African ancestry. Readers can see how uncensored slave narratives Butler's read, how her mother's stories on a sugar plantation in Louisiana she listened to, how the civil rights movement of the 1960s, how the feminist movement in the 1970s, how daily life experiences being a Black woman in this world, we can see those in the telling of Lauren's stories. So all of those experiences and reading and research Butler brought to this book. This idea that Butler's work is Afrofuturism or speculative fiction or feminist sci-fi is all true. And categories help us see important patterns and understand ideas in context. Categorizations can also overshadow the importance of literature, because literature is the study of the human condition. Who are we? Who do we want to be? What are the possibilities? We should also look at Butler's work as an exploration of what it means to be human in this world. It's all very complicated, and Butler frequently told her interviewers that she means her works to be complicated. In an interview published in Callaloo, and Callaloo, if you don't know, is a journal of literature, art, and culture of the African diaspora. They publish original work by and about writers and visual artists of African descent worldwide. So in this interview in 1991, Butler said to Randall Keenan, the interviewer, when asked if she prefers to call her work speculative fiction instead of science fiction, she said, I don't like labels, they're marketing tools. And I certainly don't worry about them when I'm writing. They are also inhibiting factors. You wind up not getting read by certain people or not getting sold to certain people because they think they know what you write. All right, so now we know a little bit about Butler. Follow me back to our discussion of the parable of the sower. Lauren, who reads very much like Butler's voice, repeats throughout her diary entries that God has changed. A quick search using a Kindle edition returns 218 mentions of God, 28 instances of the phrase God has changed, and another 6 repetitions of God has changed, and in the end, God prevails. So 218 mentions in a book that's roughly 300 pages. Quite frequently, right? So in some entries, the characters offer opportunities for Lauren to explain her rejection of her father's religion, replacing it with truth about the world she is discovering. Lauren senses that the time for her father's religion has passed. She sees her father's religion as one that advocates enduring injustices now in exchange for the promise of heaven, as a religion that advocates waiting and hoping for divine intervention, or trusting destiny instead of shaping one's present and future. Lauren very much sees her father's generation as one of inaction, as one that let climate change happen, as one that bore witness to worse violence that is, as Butler herself described, as happening to the people around them who are not nearly so powerful. As Lauren comes of age, she also represents possibilities for the future. Lauren teaches us that it's up to humanity to shape our future. The second half of the book takes readers traveling with Lauren and the 2 people from her wild community that found each other. They encounter more fires, robberies, feral dog packs, cannibalism, and terrible violence. Yet they also meet survivors traveling north, looking for something better. Gently, Lauren moves them and they join Earthseed and the alternative that she offers. For Lauren, humanity, that is Earthseed, is destined to take root among the stars. Lauren embraces science. It keeps her alive. She's learned to make acorn flour from books on native plants. She's learned that when near the ocean, a beach well can offer drinkable water. She supports the space program because Lauren believes that ultimately humanity will need to go to space if it's to continue. Humanity, according to Lauren, needs to be an active participant in shaping itself by embracing and shaping change. As an alternative to her father's religion, Lauren embraces that God has changed. Yes, that action, that idea. She explains near the end of her diary, God has changed, and in the end, God prevails. But there's no hope in understanding the nature of God, not punishing or jealous, but infinitely malleable. There's comfort in realizing that everyone and everything yields to God. There's power in knowing that God can be focused, diverted, shaped by anyone at all. But there's no power in having strength and brains and yet waiting for God to fix things for you or take revenge for you. God will shape us all every day of our lives. Best to understand that and return the effort. Shape God. So the book builds to this revelation. For many readers, it may feel really uncomfortable. Lauren, in challenging the beliefs of her father, may also challenge the reader's beliefs. Through Lauren, Butler calls for readers to accept responsibility for their lives, for the environment they live in, for the care and for the mistreatment of others, and for shaping the future of their lives. Through Lauren, Butler calls readers to act. And yet, the band of Earthseed doesn't fully reject the old beliefs of their parents. The novel closes with the parable of the sower, which is, of course, the title of the book, from Luke, as found in the Authorized King James Version. The group, having found a place to settle, to plant, to grow, see themselves as the seed that thrives, with Lauren as the sower. A sower went out to sow his seed, and as he sowed, some fell by the wayside, and it was trodden down, and fowls of the air devoured it. and some fell upon a rock. And as soon as it was sprung up, it withered away because it lacked moisture. And some fell among the thorns, and the thorns sprang up with it and choked it. And others fell on good ground and sprang up and bore fruit 100-fold. So let's go back to where it started. With the argument that Butler's Parable of the Sower beats all other books in foretelling our future. The book predicts droughts, fires, homelessness, continued discrimination based on skin color and sex, starvation, joblessness, working from home, a yearning for the way things were, dismantling government-funded science programs, privatization of public services, scarcity of health and care and medicines, a clear divide between the wealthy and the poor. Yes, droughts impact us. For the week of January 26, 2022 to February 1st, 96.2 million people in the US are affected by drought. As of December 2021, the Department of Labor reports a 3.9% unemployment rate. The New York Times reported that 2021 saw homelessness raised for the 4th year in a row. The US Census Bureau reported that 28 million people in the US had no health insurance at any point during 2020. American University reported that more than 10 million American children did not have food to eat on a daily basis in 2019. As readers, we even connect to the smaller details like working from home and teaching our children at home. So we can certainly see the argument for Butler's book being as the unmatched sci-fi novel predicting the times of today. But while interesting, that argument misses the point. In the end, this book, a clearly dystopian sci-fi novel about climate change, a clearly Afrofuturist novel that explores the realities of Black Americans, a clearly political book written in the 1990s, a clearly feminist novel with a Black female protagonist who, as Butler describes feminist characters, pretty much what she wants to do. This book, Parable of the Sower, is about hope for a better world. My reading tells me that Butler wants me to think deeply and to do better, to act, to embrace change, to be an answer to the problem. Butler's message is timeless. It is why Parable of the Sower lives past the dates of the diary entries, which will come and go over the next 5 years. To finish my brief talk, let me leave you with a story Octavia Butler wrote about in Essence magazine in May 2000. She retold an encounter she had at a bookstore signing. The student asked, "So do you really believe that in the future, we're going to have the kind of trouble you write about in your books?" Butler replies, "I didn't make the problems. All I did was look around at the problems we're neglecting now and give them about 30 years to grow into full-fledged disasters." Well, in our story, the young man isn't quite satisfied with Butler's answer, so he presses, and Butler writes, "Okay," the young man challenged. "So what's the answer?" "There isn't one," I told him. "No answer? You mean we're just doomed?" "No," I said. "I mean there's no single answer that will solve all of our future problems. There's no magic bullet. Instead, there are thousands of answers at least. You can be one of them if you choose to be." That's it. Parable of the Sower is about choosing to be an answer to a problem. Thank you. I'm open for questions. I was asked why I picked this book, and the whole impetus of the Great Books is to pick something that had meaning to you, that shaped something and changed you a little bit. And that's how this book changed me. So
If anyone has a question, you can either put it in the chat or go into the chat and at least say you have a question and we will unmute you. I'm just going to start off with Lauren. Lauren is, I think the word is hyper empathetic.
She is.
Okay. Is that do you think that was a structural choice? Is that emblematic? Is that something Butler uses in order to explore the issues, or is it part of the story?
Actually, I think it's a really important aspect of the book. I just felt like I had so much already packed in there that if I start going down that path, it would be really dense. But Lauren is hyper empathetic. She's born that way because her mother was taking drugs when she was born, and that was a side effect. Lauren, when she's younger, before she goes through adolescence, literally will start bleeding when she sees somebody else bleeding. So that hyper empathy, I think, is an important aspect of her personality because it helps her understand people and feel the pain of other people. She literally feels pain when somebody or even an animal dies. So she has enormous empathy for people in pain. And if somebody breaks their leg, she's probably going to be hobbling along beside them and also not be able to walk. So it is a really important aspect. It helps us understand why she cares so much about other people. That's a good question. Thank you.
Is there anybody else? I can't see if anybody is trying to get my attention.
I covered everything. It's always kind of a risk talking about the religious aspect of that book, but that's really the thread through the book. So.
Nobody has any other questions? Then, excuse me. I would like to thank I'm just going to call you Monica because
Yeah,
let's see. Wait,
we've known each other too long.
Oh, wait, there is a question. Do you think that her decision to set out on foot was a good one? If she had stayed, what do you think would have happened?
She had always planned to set out, even from the very start of the book. She had planned to leave when she was 18. Yeah, I think that it was absolutely necessary. Had she stayed, she would have had to accept the older generation of that eternal wishing for hope, for always wishing for the past, for the return to what was perceived as the good old days, where things didn't feel so threatening. So she had to set out. I think she just set out a little bit under different circumstances. She didn't anticipate leaving when her community was burned to the ground, and she didn't anticipate seeing all her friends and the young children and the things that happened to them. Her waiting, we could ask about that. We could talk about, should she have waited? And I think that's just a literary thing. I think that if we think about children today as they grow and mature, there's something about reaching a particular age, perhaps, where it just feels like this is the time to move out, to go and explore. And so I think she needed to wait so she had the physical maturity, the mental maturity in there. And she also planned. She was a good planner. Did I answer that question?
I think so. So she actually made the choice. She wasn't forced. Yes, it says, yes, thank you. I feel the same way.
Yeah.
And it is interesting the role of hope in dystopian novels, I think in particular is.
When I read 1984, I have a tough time seeing hope. Even when I read the more popular Hunger Games, it's a rough go to see hope in there, and they're forced. I know that it looks like in Parable of Sower that Lauren is forced into the change, but the fact that she's hyper empathetic and that she has been planning it anyway puts a completely different spin on it than the Hunger Games, which just forces change. Lauren is really intelligent and well-read and savvy.
We have another question from Greg. Wants to know what was the age difference between Lauren and Bankole, and why is it important or relevant? And is it something more accepted in 1993 than today?
I haven't thought too much about it. So the age difference, Bankole is a man that she meets along the way, and he is, if I recall correctly, really closer to her father's age. But the key to that is the key in any situation, I think, pretty much is he has to be older because he owns land, and he owns a lot of land. And an 18-year-old is not going to own a lot of land. So, or usually, right? And so I think that that's part of the thing with his age. I think that maturity level, Lauren is more mature, I think, than many 18-year-olds. She has spent more time reading and thinking, and I think her hyper empathy makes her more mature because it allows her to have that experience that others who don't have that hyper empathy don't, and they actually have to go through the process of experiencing the pain themselves. What?
Go ahead.
As far as the relationship being inseparable, Butler explores, especially like in her last book she read, Fledgling. She really pushes the boundaries and explores this idea of age difference and what is an appropriate relationship and what is an inappropriate relationship. And I'm not sure that I can comment whether or not is any more or less acceptable today than it was then, or more acceptable then than it is today. I think it depends upon the circles that you hang with.
Mark commented that he also feels that Bankole's age accentuates Lauren's wisdom beyond her years.
Yeah.
Questions? All right. Thank you to the questioners, and thank you to Monica. Waiting for one more to come up, but no. Okay. We also need to thank the CoLab for assisting us with this. Even if we're not there, they are here for us. And the marketing team has also been an incredible help, especially with the last minute change. We hope you join us next month on March 2nd, when Jim McWard will be talking about Daniel Defoe's The Year of the Plague, which might seem like it's particularly relevant right now. And we're watching our own plague to see if it will. Right now we're scheduled for Zoom, but we'll see if we can open that up a little bit then. And then on April 6th, of course, we will have Larry Reynolds talking about Alice in Wonderland. And I'm just going to go out on a limb and encourage people to come in costume. But there you go. So thank you very much. And we will see you next month.